that, they're still not doing for their anything for their constituents, and that's why they're going to lose.
Oh
That's
yeah,
yeah,
of
yeah.
course, of
So,
course. But that was
and it's so
irresponsible.
sad because I'm like, oh my gosh, that means that now we might have Texas all over the, you know,
United
Yep,
States, right?
yep.
And as we started right on time, this is 6 p.m. every Wednesday. You be the judge. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer, my co-host Marilyn Pierre, soon to be Circuit Court Judge of Montgomery County, and then Judge Claudia Barbara. We come every Wednesday to talk about you be the judge, give yourself information, understanding, and some education, and put you into an action. We usually talk about how we feel about legal issues, how it affects us on the community level, national level, and just be involved and engaged. There's a lot of issues out there that we can talk about. There's a lot of issues that affect us because we are us as human beings, not as us as only this type of group of people or that type of group of people, but we are a human race of people. And until you act as such, until you begin to act accordingly, meaning be involved. And I want to really stipulate that by being involved means that you are a human being of action. Because if you're passive, we lose all of it. We lose human rights, we lose citizen rights, we lose as a people of nation of people. That's because we're not acting. We're not acting as such. We're not acting in a community aspect. I just before we get into the show and I get Marilyn, soon to be Judge Marilyn Pierre on the air while she's listening, and you guys are listening on your iHeart and iTunes radio and all your podcast channels. I was just recently at Morgan University today for a sickle cell blood drive to bring this into a national light. I am so impressed with Morgan by taking the step up of our HBCUs because we've been contacting a lot of HBCUs to help us bring this nationally to a issue that affects predominantly African American people. And other universities have been railroading us. We've been coming up against different circumstances, and it's not good. Morgan has stepped up and saying, "We will support. We will help bring a blood drive. We will help educate our students. We are doing what we said we would do to partnership with the American Red Cross because we're in a national crisis. Our crisis is because during the pandemic, blood drives went down. Most people donated blood through their work. And that's understandable. But since work is not working, we don't have that drive anymore. So, in Black America, African Americans, people of dark skin donate the average of 4% of blood. 4%. That is horrifically the saddest thing I've ever had in my life. We're losing people who cannot get transfusions because we don't have enough blood, because African Americans don't donate. We're losing people to sickle cell because Black people don't donate. We're losing people to gun violence, not because of violence of getting shot, because when you go to the hospital, African Americans has predominantly the highest of O positive blood, and they're still not donating. So we're losing people, even if they get to the hospital, they can't get a transfusion to save their life from a gunshot because African Americans are not donating. It's disgusting. It's sad. I've been beating this drum for a while. I don't want to get on, but Marilyn, I see you have vote. I look at it this way. I have a hard time understanding how people vote if people don't take a time to have compassionate to save other people's lives by giving of themselves. We're not asking for you to give money. We're not asking you to give all of your time. We're asking you to give some of your time. And if you can't do that to save a life, I don't see how you are actually going to the polls and vote.
well, we're hoping that they'll do all of that, but at a minimum, we're hoping that they will vote. But I do want to talk about giving Morgan State their kudos for helping with this very, very important issue. I have seen people who suffer from sickle cell anemia, and it has been awful for me to watch them because they are in such excruciating
Pain.
pain that you don't want anybody to suffer like that. I remember I was at the side of the hospital bed of a young man who was the son of a client of mine. And oh my gosh, it was, I mean, he had an episode and it was just so horrible. So thank you, Dr. Dyer, for everything that you're doing to hopefully find a cure for this very, very painful disease. And thank you very much as well to Morgan State University for bringing more awareness to the issue.
Now let's get into, as being community, you have Vote On, and there's a lot of issues we are not just having with voting, but people speaking up about voting. We're still hearing the same narrative from oppositions and what I mean by oppositions, I don't want to say it's from this political party or that political party, because to me they're both talking the same nonsense, and it leaves a lot of people out of the communication of the race. What is going on, Marilyn? And you're part of this process because we're going to vote you in.
Well, but for that I actually want to go to Comfort, because Comfort has a really nice tagline in terms of voting. So Comfort, do you want to say it?
Hey, how you all doing?
Hi, Comfort.
Well, nice to see you.
Okay, nice to see you guys. So I was at the parade, and was interacting with the voters that we met along the parade route, and I was promoting our beautiful judge here, and I was telling them, you know, we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
So I was passing out the flyer, and I was telling them, do you all want peace? If you want peace, vote for justice. You know what they say? No justice, no peace.
That's right.
So she will represent.
I love that.
So everybody started, you know, mistaking me for, are you the judge? Why? What? What's yours in this one? I mean, the way I was, you know, promoting her, and they think I was the one running for the job. So I said, no, no, no. And then she came along and waved at them and said, you know, vote for me. I have your interests at heart. And I gave her some of my flyers too. And the following day, we went to the lynching commemoration.
Oh, yes, we have to talk about that too afterwards. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And I was able to meet with the county executive and Mr. James.
Director James Stowe.
Yes.
From the Human Rights Commission, Montgomery County Human Rights Commission.
Yes. So we had a lengthy talk, and I mean, he was not aware of my son's situation. He said, "No, that's not what he had. That he had that my son had a weapon, an ice pick, and he was coming at the police officer. That's why he killed him." I said, "That's not true, because I mean, portion of it was captured on video, and then we gave the state attorney at that time the video, because that's what we had too." So I said, you know, when we gave them the video and they know that we caught them right-handed, then they say, oh, somebody mistakenly deleted the video. So they threw the case out of court.
Comfort, I want you to bring people who have not heard your story, and I do apologize for that. Okay. Because please bring people up to speed about your son and what happened. If people haven't heard this, they could be the first time they're hearing this. So please, Comfort.
Oh, I was all over the place. You know, I even went to the White House. I was all over the TV. You know, I mean, I'll be surprised because, I mean, even the current state attorney was telling me, oh, was that the one killed? Everybody knows it, but was that the one killed in downtown Silver Spring? I said, yes. And he went to City Place Mall. This is over 10 years ago, before Trayvon Martins, before Walter Scott, before Tamir Rice, before all these people. You know, he went to City Place Mall. He was coming from work. So a fight broke out and he was leaving. And Officer Jordan was on the other side of Coatesville writing a minor collision report, unaware of what was going on. As soon as he saw a black man, his mindset was, he must have done something. That's why they were fighting or something. So he left what he was doing, and then he told him to stop like 30 times in 30 seconds. I said, how is that possible? You cannot even finish saying stop. 30 seconds is, up. So luckily for us, there was a liquor store right there by Fenton Street. And my attorney went there, Brian McDaniel, and reviewed the video and said, he asked me, he said, come and view this video. I said, from my culture, I'm supposed to know the beginning of my child's life, not the end. I said, I'm not coming. Plus, I was not in the right state of mind. I said, I don't want to watch it, the end of my child's life. And he was 3 months shy from graduating from Bowie State. So all of that, I said, just make sure you secure that video. And he said he will. So I didn't think anything of it. But when we filed the lawsuit and, it's time for us to go to court, and then the state attorney said, he said he was charging at the officer. I said, no, that's not true. Show me where you see anything in his hand in this video. Oops, somebody mistakenly deleted the video. So we never get any justice. And I know the feelings. So I was talking to the county executive about that. I said, even this pandemic, a lot of, minorities lose their job. Out of those 40,000 jobs that were lost during this pandemic.
Oh, you
She
muted
hit your
yourself.
mute. You hit your mute, Comfort.
But before you start talking about that, can we go back to talk about voting, and then after
Yes.
that we could talk about the lynching
Yes.
and the history of lynchings in Montgomery County?
Okay, I just encourage people to come out, and we all want the same thing, either you're brown or black or whatever. We all want peace in Montgomery County, and every parent, no mother, want their child slaughtered like a dog on the street. So I'm telling everybody, come out, vote. You want peace, you have to vote for justice. This is the only woman running, and she will represent us. She will represent us to the best of our ability. So I'm just encouraging people to vote.
Here's the thing. I'm going to hand this over. It's not that Marilyn's going to represent us. Marilyn's going to listen. There's a difference between representation as a judge, because she's not here to represent. She's here to listen and to understand what she's listening to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference between other people who are sitting on the bench. They choose to say they hear us, but they're not listening to us.
No,
and there's a difference. So Marilyn, go, please, about the voting.
Well, first of all, I have to thank your beautiful, wonderful, marvelous wife. And you're a pet parent, so I have to thank Addie as well.
A little superstar.
Because, yeah, exactly, he was. And for those of you who don't know it, Addie is, Dr. Dyer's little dog, just so cute, so adorable. And unlike my daughter, I cannot remember animal breeds because I'm not as smart as she is. So what breed is Addie again?
Addie's he's a rescue, and he's a mixture between Chocolate Lab and a German Shorthair Pointer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, we were walking in the Burtonsville Day Parade on Saturday. Comfort was there with me. Dr. Dyer's wife was there with me. Dr. Dyer's son, Addie, was there with me, since you're a pet parent. And it was so much fun. Your wife directed me really, really well. She's like, do this, do that, go do this. You need to be here, you need to be there. So that was a whole lot of fun. And Comfort, I hope you had fun as well.
I did.
Great. It was wonderful meeting all those people. People were just so engaged already, even though the campaign, has 9 more months to go before primary in June. It was really, really inspiring to hear all these people and listen to what they had to say, talk to them about some of their concerns. And I look forward to doing it again some other place. Yeah, and in terms of voting, I think people vote when they have something to vote for, or maybe even sometimes when they have something to vote against. And it's really sad because there's some places where you don't get to vote. I heard today in the news, yeah, I think it was today in the news where they said that the prime minister in Haiti is going to postpone the November elections until next year. And so,
just
so
stop it. He's just going to
yeah,
stop the election.
Exactly. It's like, hey, this date is not convenient for me. I think next year it might be convenient. And if we remember, that is one of the things that the president who was assassinated did. He's like, I want to stay in for one more year. And people can argue. I mean, I've spoken to different people in the Haitian community, and some of them said, yes, he should have gotten out. And some of them said, oh, no, he had one more year to go. But then either way, when you don't have a definite date for the president to take office, and when you don't have a definite date for the president to leave, it makes things extremely confusing. So the fact that in this country, people have a right to vote, and they have a right to vote for different offices. I find it so sad that so many of them throw that vote away. I live in the city of Gaithersburg, and we have elections in November. And I think last time they had elections, I think maybe 4,000 people voted. And I don't know out of a possible what, but when I saw the numbers, I was extremely, extremely saddened by that, because we have a great city. It is, I think, the second most diverse city in the country. Under 100, I'm sorry, under 900. No, is that right? No, under 90,000 or something like that. I forgot. I went to a forum and the mayor was bragging about that. So yeah, under 90,000, second most diverse city. And we're upset about being number 2 because last year, well, I don't know about last year, but before the pandemic, right before the pandemic, we were number 1. So we want our spot back. So like I said, the fact that there's so few people voting is really, really sad.
Comfort had said something about people vote for peace or for justice. Mm-hmm. I think a majority of people don't vote because they don't feel like they are personally affected. And it doesn't, and now you say, well, how is that possible? How can a person feel like they are not affected by the X, the Y, and the Z when it comes to voting for who, and voting for what? They're so traumatized by their job that they may or may not have, their money status that they may or may not have, their security that they may or may not have, meaning that is my son coming home? Is my daughter coming home? Is my children going to be personally harmed or affected by what's in the streets? There's all these other dynamics that people tend to hold off and don't get informed, so they don't be involved. So we always say education's everything. We need to educate and inform them. But if they don't listen to programs like this, or we don't knock on their door, and I'm talking to the African American community or the Latino community, a lot of the communities, they're just like, well, it don't affect me, I'm out.
Well, let me share something just on that point, Dr. Dyer.
Yeah.
Annapolis City surprisingly, there were maybe about 1,700 or more registered Democratic voters. Some of the primary elections were decided by 5 votes. One particular seat was contested, and the things that voters who don't vote or citizens who don't vote, what they don't realize is the impact that they have. First of all, the mayor, whenever you're dealing with municipalities, and that could be a city or a town, you have a mayor, you have a city administrator, you have people that employ people, and the mayor decides who the police chief is. Now let's stop right there, because who the police chief is relevant. And not only is it relevant, but, and I will say from my experience, the NAACP, the Anne Arundel County NAACP, had a seat at the table in deciding who was going to be the next police chief. And we also were persuasive in getting the mayor to put in his cabinet diversity. We wanted to see that. We wanted to see that with our eyeballs. Okay. The current mayor, Gavin Buckley, has one of the most diverse teams. Cabinet-wise, he has a Black city attorney, he has a Black police chief, he has a Black director of public works. He has an acting director of transportation that's of African-American descent. So he has in a very intentional way diversified his staff and his higher up, and not just the small jobs, but the big jobs. To have a seat at the table is relevant, and whether the mayor will let you have a seat at the table is relevant, because one of the questions that the NAACP representative asked the police chief is, how would you handle racism in your rank and file? And we wanted to know the answers from the applicants. What type of disciplinary action are you looking at when you see that happening on the police force? We want to know the answer to that. And to the extent that the mayor you put in place has the power to make those decisions is important to citizens, and should be important to citizens. Because when something happens the wrong way, you want to basically understand and hold their feet to the fire and know what you're getting. It's kind of hard when you kind of, choose people and then all of a sudden, oops, that's not what we meant. So that, when something happens and we want to go back and say, hey, wait a minute, this discipline, is looking upside down or something like that. Right. In any jurisdiction, any jurisdiction you name,
it's just so important. And I know we had a person with their hand up. I think it was Erica. Did I see that right? Erica?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So what I was going to say was, as a citizen, speaking as a citizen within the community, I believe that there is a level of distrust, right? And of course, if we believe in a higher power, we're to trust in our higher power. But if we come down amongst the people, I believe that the trust is not there when it comes to, okay, I'm going to vote, but even after I vote, now I have to trust that these individuals I voted for are going to have integrity and stand up when they're in that room at the table, as Judge Barber just spoke about, when you're at the table, I need to trust that you're going to have the community's best interests at hand and not just your interests at hand for your next level because you don't want to ruffle feathers, because you want to actually get another position somewhere else, you know?
Exactly. And
That is so
that is,
true.
wow, that you said a lot.
So, you know, with that, you know, in speaking as an impacted person, you know, I work with Reverend Morris with the Community Actively Seeking Transparency.
Mhm.
Even outside of that being the individual I am, those things are very important to me. And I stand in line, I go vote. But at the same time, I question, I'm like, okay, I want to do this because I don't want my vote not to be counted, but I really need them to have integrity and really follow through and not make it a self agenda for them, you know, for the sake of their careers. I need them to really think about what it is they're doing.
So
So
Erica,
yeah, that's
so
how I see
hold
things.
on. I got two very highly push questions for you.
Okay.
I'm glad that you check and ask the question. That is so key, right? That is so key. Now I'm going to ask you a very spot on. Did you vote for 45 or Joe Biden?
Well, that's a personal question.
No,
and
she can
Erica
she
doesn't
can
wanna
answer.
it.
She can answer.
Because I always say it's important to vote. Because
Right, I
whoever
know.
you voted, whoever ends up getting in office doesn't know who you voted for.
Correct.
We
And
don't know what
so,
we're getting. We
and you're
don't
still
know what
paying,
we're getting.
So
well, and then you're still paying for the taxes. I'm sorry, you
Yeah.
through your taxes are still paying for that elected official's salary. So therefore, that person works for you, whether or not you voted for that person.
because we're having this, the reason why I asked that I know it's a personal question because I tell you, I voted for Joe Biden, but I didn't trust him. I mean, I really don't trust Joe Biden. I never.
And if
Well,
Erica
well,
wants to answer the question, she could go ahead and answer it. I
Yeah.
just, you know.
Well, no, I
wanted to give-
appreciate that, Marilyn. No, I do appreciate that. What I will say is, you're right. Whether I voted for one or the other,
Right.
I have to say I question whether or not they're going to
Be integrity.
fulfill some of those things. Yeah, have
Right.
integrity. And I must say, those are some of the things that I question, but I still vote.
That's
Yes.
yeah.
And I think when Erica talked about integrity, it reminded me of what's happening in Detroit right now, where the Detroit city officials are they're pleading guilty to, you know, to all kinds of things, because as city officials, they have the right to approve contracts for
Right.
snow removal and some other things, and those contracts were quite lucrative, so they decided that some of them have pled guilty, so they decided that they were going to allow themselves to be bought. So they did not have the best interest of the people who voted for them in mind.
And we're not even sure if they can be removed. Can they be removed?
But I don't know, because it depends on what the laws are for elected officials in Detroit. Yeah, so
I have a question here. I like the idea that you asked the question, you know, did you vote? And but people should not just vote and just leave it there.
That's right.
You know?
Mhm.
That's
That's true.
right.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, one of the
Absolutely.
things Carl Snowden has taught me, you know, because I consider him a great mentor,
that's true.
is that you have quarterly meetings with these elected officials so that you can keep them on the same page and say, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, your campaign promise was that we the new police chief.
Yeah.
Your campaign promise was that there would be police reform and we would get rid of chokeholds.
Yeah.
Your campaign promise was A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
And you haven't
Now,
done
where are
nothing.
we?
Yeah. Where are we?
Where are we?
Yeah.
You got to ask those questions and be a part of that meeting.
Because we tend to sit back in our chairs. We go back to our football games, and I'm a sports fan, but we go back to our issues and we say, I did my job, I voted, and yes, you know, they're still doing those backroom deals, and we haven't got nothing. I mean,
Right,
less
right.
than nothing. Matter of fact, we have a
Right.
president that's upholding the last president's human rights violation. How is that possible? Right? And now we have a governor who's in New York who they fired all kinds of healthcare workers. How was that smart? They just lost 20% of their healthcare force because certain
Mm.
people are not getting shots. So you fire them? Okay, where are we headed now? That's a precedence that if New York's going to do it and they allowed it to do it, and if they're going to do it, now I understand that the president couldn't do it on the federal level, but when states start firing healthcare workers or workers because of dot, 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 you may say it's because of shots, you may say it's because of COVID, but now what if I just say it because I just don't like you?
Mm. Mhm.
Where does this end?
And that happens in the workforce. That happens in the workforce.
It does, and it's legal. If your boss doesn't like you, in most places, the boss could just fire you. They don't, they don't have to give you a reason.
Dr. Yvette, yes.
Thank you so much for, I'm loving this discussion, but one thing I was gonna say as an African-American woman who's worked in various communities, especially the Latino community as well, we as African-Americans don't hold people accountable. We don't ask, we don't, we don't put our foot to the fire. I worked with LULAC and I tried to bring to the NAACP. And what LULAC does, and then let me take a step back. If you guys know what LULAC is the League of United Latin American Citizens. It's the oldest civil rights organization for Latinos, established in 1924, actually based on the NAACP bylaws and principles by two Mexican Americans from Texas and their wives. And they actually the NAACP helped them get their momentum and start. But to say all that, in this organization, twice a year, they meet with all the elected officials on Capitol Hill, and they train the folks to lobby and go in and address their issues. Now, they're not they're not all over the map. They're very pointed on what they want to address, and they're issues that they had, vote when they voted for them during the elections. Now, we as Black folks, and I'll say this, I brought this to the NAACP. I said, we should be doing something like this. And I served as the Maryland State Director for LULAC and sat on their national board for 6 years. I also served with NAACP for 20 plus years. And I left that because I saw what Latinos were doing for their communities, but yet we were not doing it for our communities. And when I tried to bring it, was like, well, we have our legislative folks up there. They train kids. We took high school students and trained them to lobby and took them to Capitol Hill twice a year. All the board went, we took high school students and collegiate students, and we don't do that. And those opportunities are there for us to do it, but we don't take advantage. I think we've gotten complacent as a people.
How did we get complacent when we never had anything?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know how did we get complacent? There was nothing. We never had nothing.
No, but I think we're complacent.
Do you remember when?
We're complacent in not having anything. That's the thing.
Dr. Yvonne,
As not having. And that's
if I may come in.
Hold on, Comfort. Holly?
Do you remember when a Black voter asked why Black voters should vote for Trump? And do you remember, did he ever answer? His response was, what do you have to lose? Now, did anyone ever refute that and say what Black voters had to lose by voting for Trump? Because if they did, I missed it.
Well, I do, after talking to Black men who voted for Trump, great discussions. They voted for their money. They voted for their 401k that did amazingly under Trump. Now, we can talk about how come their money did so well. He deregulated a lot of things, so a lot of companies were doing better. So the stock market did go up. He did a lot of things that affected the market, so a lot of Black men voted for their retirement plans. You see what I mean? They didn't vote for him per se. They're like, if I can live in this neighborhood with the money I make, I can keep my kids safe. That's short term. That is short term thinking, because your neighborhood that you live in, I don't care what neighborhood you thinking, you want to live in the white gated community. When your son leaves and drives downtown, he may not come home.
Yeah.
He may be safe on your block, but let him go to a Washington football game. Let him go to a
Yeah.
Baltimore football game. He may not make it back.
Well, Trayvon Martin shows you that he might not even be safe in that neighborhood that the father lives in. So
But that answers the question, Holly. A lot of black men did vote for their 401k and their retirement plan. It's
But
just,
didn't their 401k do just as well with Joe Biden?
no.
And wouldn't it have done just as well with Hillary Clinton? I think so. If you had money, you make money. I mean, it's that. So when people say they're voting their pocketbook, it doesn't hold true, really.
I agree with Holly on this one. And I say that because I'm an investor in the stock market, and the stock market goes up and down
All the time.
now. And it's a question of, how deeply people invest in the stock market, because the stock market is not just mutual funds and
Right.
retirement accounts. You have hedge funds, you have people buying options, selling options, making, buying puts, calls, and, writing covered calls and selling short and all that in the stock market. So any one of us on this phone could be an investor by just opening up an account. The system has changed dramatically.
Mhm.
They're selling, you have TD Ameritrade, Robinhood, Acorn, all of them selling commission-free stock exchanges. You can buy stock without paying commissions. So they have really opened it up for the average Joe Blow to invest in the stock market. And actually, during this past pandemic, I've done extremely well in the stock market. Not every stock that's I've bought has gone up all the time. But just during this entire pandemic, from March of last year all the way up to now, I've had a huge return on my investment. And even as
dinner
of
on Judge
today,
Barber.
even as of today, I mean, I have, like 10, half a dozen more, 2 dozen stocks maybe in the green. All my entire portfolio is in the green. No red. And there is, and because I can't say that because of, I would vote for Trump because of the stock market. I just wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I agree with Holly and Judge Barber. I think that's what they told us. That's what they may have even had to tell themselves.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make any sense. You
It's
have a woman who is highly qualified. She has held more offices and have been in more rooms where these types of discussions are being done than anybody that I could think of. Then you have a man who has filed for bankruptcy
Several times.
And who was given a lot of money to start a business, and the business is not faring well. I mean, it's like the Wizard and the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
There's really nothing behind it.
He's definitely a confidence man.
Exactly. So to say that, this was the businessman who was going to take the country to where these people wanted to, and that's why they voted for him.
Because if that was the
It
case,
just doesn't
we
ring true.
could have voted in Ross Perot. We could have had just as much.
Exactly.
Those aren't genuine or valid reasons,
Right.
in my mind,
Mhm,
to go in that direction. They're just not,
mhm.
serious.
I also heard that black men was also, this is called statistical data and how that research goes, that black men was against, very strong for immigration, or stopping immigration, of the borders being closed down, and to be stricter on immigration. I did hear that also as a percentage why black men did vote for Trump.
Well, see,
like I
that's
said,
confusing, totally confusing, because when I think about the Haitian incarceration versus the Cuban policy we have. I'm confused. I'm totally confused. I'm flabbergasted. Because your policy all turns on somebody's nationality or
Yeah.
their
Mhm.
complexion.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. And not only that, but the level of hatred that this man brought before he got elected. I mean, that was shocking to me. I mean, and to vote for somebody ignoring all that hatred, whether you're a person of color, whether you're a poor person, whether you are a woman, that is really, really shocking. But the number of Black men who voted for Trump, being what it was low. It was the number of white women who voted for Trump that really flabbergasted me. And I could not believe it, because somebody who says that, I grab women by their private parts, and if you're important enough, they let you. I just, oh my God. That was,
Dr. Yvette?
Dr. Butler, you want to say
I
something?
just want to say that, I met a few Black men, and I know a few Black who voted for Trump, and their reason was, it was multifactorial, but one of them was they just couldn't vote for a woman. And then,
See, that I believe.
just
I
couldn't
believe
vote
that.
for a woman. And then when you look at
That's
what,
believable.
then if you look at what Hillary and did during her time when Bill was in office.
Mhm.
First of all, and this is one of my very good friends, he voted for Trump. He said, you have more Black men locked up by the 3 strikes you're all out than anything else. And
Right.
that super predator was real.
Yes.
We gotta
Mhm.
realize that Hillary, unfortunately, wasn't a great candidate. Now, I voted for her, but she wasn't a great candidate to put up there, especially against someone who is misogynistic and everything else. And most Black men are, I hate
Yeah.
to say it,
Well, they are.
they're in that vein. So you have to think about it. First of all, we had the most, that whole super predator that she really pushed out there. And as a female, that made Black men think, well, she's the one who put a lot of my relatives and myself in jail.
Correct.
And then you think about what they did with the Haiti crisis. They went down and was working in the Haiti crisis. And they said they're not, Bush and Clinton were both getting honorariums. And they weren't getting paid, but they got honorariums of $25,000 per day. So
Mhm.
let's be real. And then they packed up, and this is the first hurricane or the first earthquake. Then they packed up and left the country. So then there goes a whole big thing. Then if you look at the African side, for African men, I met a few Africans who voted for Trump, and they hated Hillary because Gaddafi.
Yep.
Gaddafi would have unified the continent of Africa, and Hillary was one of the big proponents of getting rid of Gaddafi.
He was.
So we have to
She
think
was.
about those people who, from all over the world, not just us, Africans, they weren't supporting Hillary because of what she did on the continent to destabilize the continent of Africa. Haitians, because what she did when they took the money away. Black Americans for locking up our young Black men. So she was not a good candidate for Black men.
Well,
But this is
I
insightful,
agree
but
with
see,
everything. I agree with everything that you said, but I still see the element of race of sexism in there. And what I mean by that is that they would have voted for Clinton for a 3rd term over Trump. So that's why
I don't know, some of the
there's
ones
all of that, but then
but some of the ones I talked to would not have. They said they were
no,
going to get.
no, I'm sorry, they would have voted for Bill Clinton for a 3rd term over Trump.
So no,
Well,
they wouldn't have voted for him. They wouldn't have voted for him because of what those 3 factors I just named. Because she
Yeah.
was heavily involved in them, and we got to realize that. And
I
look,
just wanted to share that. Keep in mind, though, that she literally, plurality-wise, she won the majority of the votes. That's historically a fact.
Mhm.
And to the extent that she did, she had the most votes.
Mhm.
But I agree with the doctor that there may have been some hesitation, but a lot of folks come up with reasons that just don't wash out. If because she was a woman, then then fine. I understand that. And that sounds believable. That sounds like a credible
It sounds
reason.
sad, but true.
Sad, but true. It sounds sad, but true. You're absolutely right.
Just like with Joe Biden, a lot of people hold him accountable of that policy he adhered to with imprisonment. You know, that whole increased incarceration.
Mhm.
He was part of that bill, and then when asked about it, he backed away from it, and I don't like that. I think at the time he should say, "At the time, I did this because," but he didn't do that. He was like, "Oh, it's a mistake, and I shouldn't." And how was it a mistake? Was it a mistake because you voted for it, or was it a mistake that we asked you about it? Because you still didn't clarify.
And yeah, that's the exact same point that I'm making, because I would like to ask those same black men, Dr. Butler, if they voted for Biden, because
Right,
Biden
right.
has a lot to do with the mass incarceration that we see today. So if they were able to overlook that and vote for Biden, but they couldn't overlook some of what Hillary Clinton did and vote for her. Well, mind you, I am not here to cheer Hillary Clinton. I'm not saying that, she's the, she's the quintessential person and she should have been in office. That's not why I'm here. We're just here to have a discussion as to, I guess, the two choices we were faced with back in 2016.
It's
Well,
about
three people, they wouldn't have voted for, they said they wouldn't have voted for, they didn't vote for Biden. I'll just say it now, they did not.
Yeah.
They didn't change their vote, literally.
So they voted for Trump again?
No, they didn't vote at all.
Oh, all right, well.
You know what? Here's the thing, and we talked about this before. It's policy. We have to understand when a person is running, what is their policy?
Mhm.
Their personality, not so much. I could care less. The way they wear their shoes, I could care even less. What is their policy that they are in written form, not what their verbal policy is? Because they can go to Cleveland and say something, and then go to Connecticut and say something else. They can hit all the C's and say something, and then they go to M states and say something. We need to hear policy, and that's what we don't hear. A lot of our candidates is, I want to see the policy you have written, and we want to go over that. Just like you go over your speeches, I read all speeches. Every time someone gives a speech, I read, because what I hear maybe not something that they actually said. So I read over all the speeches. I want to see policy on paper. Is this what you're going to do? Because this is what you have, right? This is what you said. And a lot of policies they're not doing. And a lot of policies, like Judge Barber said, that they said they were going to do, we don't hold their feet to the fire. Dr. Erica, go ahead.
Yes, what I was going to say is it was a good segue, because speaking of policy, it wasn't until almost about 10 years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, where I realized how important it was about really hearing about a person and seeing what they're speaking about in reference to policy within your community on the judge level, and things like that. And I've been trying to, of course, spread the word since then with my family members and co-workers that you guys don't understand. We vote judges in our communities, okay? And I'm assuming there's some other way to get, be elected as well. But all in all, you have a voice. And you have to think of, when you're voting about the president, just as much you do have to think about voting for a judge, because they come with their sometimes strong implicit biases, and it then becomes part of the whole big agenda to lock up our youth and things like that. So I think we look on a high point, but also we gotta remember, and I always repeat to myself as well too, and my friends and family, always look at the ballot too with the judges as well, because the communities you live in, if anything happens, you got to go before these people. And you only pray, the same thing I said about voting in general, that they have, that the discretion is not abused,
Well,
and another thing too is, I think, not being able to attain counsel, that's a huge issue as well. So those are just some of the things that I've realized over the last 10, 15 years that strongly affect the community and their mental health, because it can definitely affect it in that way. Over.
I am so glad you raised some of those
Mhm.
points. Because when you look at how Governor Hogan has appointed judges, he's doing it in a very special, strategic way
And quiet.
and quietly. But I see
Quiet.
what he's doing.
No one sees it. No one even writes
I
about
see
it.
it.
Well, wait, did he like actually put the news on lockdown? Because they never write about it.
No, they don't. They
That's
don't.
scary when he appoints judges and nothing gets written about the judge. It kind of raises a hair on the back of my neck, going, something's up. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead, Judge Barber.
Yeah, I think that Erica said a lot when she says you should be paying attention, because I am, from what I have experienced, I would say in the last 5 or 6 years myself personally, I have seen huge deficiencies in the judicial system. And I see it as a system that is just so on the wrong end of things that it puts people of color at a huge disadvantage. Let me put it that way. And the reason I say that is because this system is so messed up that when somebody wrongs you or incarcerates you or takes your freedom away, your go-to should never be, I have to spend $1 million on an attorney to be free. I'm just telling you, frank and to the point. You should not be going to lawyers spending millions and millions of dollars to be free. Or the other alternative is take a plea deal. Oh, come on. There should be some change in that stuff where people are not pleading guilty to things they did not do. I'm just frankly saying it out loud.
Yes,
And
and Judge Barber, you make a good point. Mhm.
May I be here for a minute? So, okay, this is Reynolds. Basically, Marilyn and I were both present when an attorney was appointed, I think, to the appellate court in Maryland. Please correct me.
Yeah, it was to the Maryland Court of Appeals, the highest court in Maryland, in the state of Maryland.
Without ever having been in the district court as a judge or the circuit court as a judge.
Or the Court of Special Appeals as a judge. He just went
Right.
whoop straight up. And he said, I think he had 17 years of practicing law at the time.
And see, I have over 30, but go ahead, go ahead.
Exactly. So
I'm done.
and I also have to add, 17 years and 30 years, they're just numbers, but it also has to do with the types of law that you have. You know, you could be, I guess, a pen pusher for 17 years and still qualify. You can still get
That's right.
appointed.
That's
But
right.
for somebody who's been in the courtroom and somebody who has dealt with different populations, just like Erica was saying, you know, people with mental health issues and people with substance use issues, it's different to deal with them than it is if you have been a pen pusher. And what I mean, and this is something that you just can't learn, you know, on the job, because what happens then is, oh, okay, I've heard about this, so this is the way to handle this, as opposed to having real life experience dealing with people with those sorts of issues and knowing how to address them properly and knowing what to do to keep them safe as well as the public.
You know, Marilyn, people may not know your background, so give your short background before you take off here and go to your next meeting, why you're going to be the next circuit court judge of Montgomery County. Because it's almost sad that people don't hear it enough or people don't know it at all. So go ahead.
May I be heard for a minute?
Yes,
Who wants
Nancy.
to be heard?
Okay. With respect to appellate judges, Warren, the Supreme Court judge,
Earl Warren.
who did Brown v. Education, got a unanimous court to go for Brown v. Education, was never, so far as I know, was never a judge anyplace. He was the governor of California.
Mhm.
And what's her name is on the Supreme Court now, a female liberal. So was the deal?
Elena Kagan or,
Huh?
Amy
Yes.
Coney Barrett.
No.
Supreme Court,
The Supreme Court,
you talking Sonia
liberal,
Soto,
she
Sonia
was dean of the
Sotomayor?
Harvard Law School. So
Uh,
far-
Elena Kagan, Elena Kagan.
Yeah, so far as I know, was never a US district, a judge anyplace else
That's true.
other than,
Yeah.
Supreme Court.
And we could say the other, I mean, there are always these examples and there are always these exceptions to these examples. I think what Judge Barber and I are saying, and I think what Reynolds is saying as well, is that so much is expected of us. If we were to get up there and we didn't have that background, it would be like, oh my
Yeah.
God, she doesn't have that background, therefore she's not qualified.
Right.
And this, that, and the other. So
false narrative.
Yeah, it's false
All
narrative.
of that is false
But they
narrative.
could do that, and that's okay, that's acceptable, and, you know.
So the voters should not be buying false narratives because, you know, even when they try to hit people up or fool voters into believing that they are the best qualified because the executive order is written that way, that doesn't make you the best qualified because the executive order is written that way and you made the short list and the governor appointed you. I mean, you've seen some horrible stuff in the judiciary in terms of, you just had a judge commit suicide who was about
No, we have to slow down. A judge who went through all the background checks that you could think of, because he was the state's attorney for Caroline County for years and years and years. And then he got appointed by Governor Hogan. And so he supposedly went through the process of being vetted by the governor's commission, going through the background check that happens when a judge gets appointed, got voted in by the people. And then I will leave the rest to you, Judge Barber.
Well, I mean, then he was appointed and served on the court. And, you know, the story is now that he is deceased and he is believed to have committed suicide.
Because
at the time that he was going to be charged or investigated for misconduct with minor children.
Yeah, he was going to be, what they said, the FBI was at his door to come and pick him up to charge him with child sexual exploitation because they found tapes of him taping young boys since 2004.
It's crazy.
All that
long. My goodness. We're about ready to close up here. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. You Be the Judge. Please join us. If you would like to join us for another conversation, please contact us. You can actually join us to link, those of you listening and liking and sharing and loving. We're going to be taking out of here. Marilyn, before you take off, because I know you got to cut off real quick. Anything?
Oh, no, I just love it. I'm really glad. I thought we had a spirited conversation. If we want to have another conversation instead of having a guest next week.
But we're going to ask Dr. Yvette. We're going to ask Dr. Yvette to come on, Dr. Butler. So we're going to ask her. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Mithun, your hand is up.
Yeah.
Mithun.
Yeah, hi, Judge. How are you? Hi. I actually, sorry to miss last week. I was there to receive our Prime Minister of India, Sri Narendra Modi. So I'm going to send some pictures at Andrews Air Force Base. So I was there last week to receive.
Wonderful. Well, we missed you, but you were doing other things. And
I just wanted to say one thing, Judge. What you said and what Marilyn said, everybody, Dr. Dyer said, everything was very good. And as because I'm born in India, I can say one thing for sure that we say in US is that judicial system is gold standard. But the problem is if we stop that notion, people will say, no, this is corrupt system, possibly. So that's the notion we need to change because, oh my gosh, I see so much wrongdoing happening. And I myself have a case in Supreme Court where sitting judges took money and suppressed evidences, and one of them was their cousin. So from the defense attorney's law firm. So, oh my gosh, I can't believe these things I can see that because I was totally saying that gold standard is here, judicial, but
Yeah,
Judge Bar-
we have the best system, but it does need us to be part of the system. Us as the
You
republic.
have to have good people.
You have to
in the
got good
system.
people, right? So, I think everyone, Judge Barber, before we take off, anything?
No, I don't. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate all the beautiful
Yes.
listeners and the participants.
Yes.
We've had a large amount of participants on our program these past few times. That's wonderful
That's wonderful.
news.
Yeah, we just got to, and what I would like to tell you, take this conversation to your coworkers, your friends, your family, and your next door neighbor. Each one teach one, because until we have a conversation, you won't know where everyone is standing. And this is not about having conflict. This is about communication, because there are many reasons why people do many things. And until we all talk about it, we're all going to continue to do the same thing over and over and hope for a better outcome. And it doesn't work.
Right.
That's true. Thank you so much, everyone. We look
Thank you
forward
for
to
having
seeing
this
you next week.
podcast.
Bye.
Okay,